With its first detection, dated in 2015, the malware Pegasus, made by the Israeli cyber surveillance company NSO Group, has been used by governments worldwide to infect the phones of activists, journalists, and human rights defenders. With the support of Amnesty International and the Citizen Lab, Forensic Architecture's digital violence investigation has for the first time mapped the global landscape of cyber infections and told the stories of those being surveilled and intimidated. Dozens of people from all over the world spoke to us remotely about their experiences, despite knowing the risks of provoking additional surveillance. They included journalists targeted by Pegasus,
activa tu propio teléfono, activa tu propia cámara, tu propio micrófono,
human rights defenders.
They are threats. Of course you have fear.
And community figures who told us that being hacked is a form of violence.
On te met devant les gens et on te déshabille et on t'interdit même de protéger ta vie. C'est une violence. C'est une violence.
We also spoke to lawyers pursuing the NSO Group for accountability.
Bring another case to the court would be helpful for us to show that there is a pattern in their behavior.
To understand these stories and reveal patterns in how Pegasus is used, we have collected data from dozens of reports by the Citizen Lab, legal files, hundreds of news articles, as well as corporate documents collected by Amnesty International. This produced the most complete database of Pegasus infections worldwide, which we have plotted in an interactive, continuously updated platform. The project reveals that hacks rarely target individuals alone. Digital infection moves like a contagion within networks of collaboration and friendship. And those digitally infected suffer acts of violence in the physical world. This platform also shows how investigators, journalists, human rights defenders, and lawyers seeking accountability were themselves targeted. Investigating the financial structure of the NSO Group reveals how private investment expands the corporate network within which the NSO Group is nested, and how it helped the proliferation of this repressive technology around the world. We collaborated with Brian Eno to create a work of data sonification to the digital platform. Together, our digital violence project reveals the global landscape of a new digital battlefield in which a private company helps states wage war against their own people.
Como periodista mexicana, la experiencia de haber sufrido espionaje, de saber que todas mis actividades, las personales, las profesionales, las íntimas, las familiares, todas aquellas actividades que una persona que sufre espionaje de Estado vive, pues acaban siendo vigiladas. Es un malware que activa tu propia cámara, tu propio micrófono, eso que forma parte integral de tu vida.
On the 12th of January 2015, Carmen Aristegui's phone received a text message. The message was a digital infection attempt performed by Pegasus, a spyware designed and operated by the NSO Group, an Israeli cyber weapons manufacturer. Carmen is editor-in-chief of Aristegui Noticias, which exposed countless stories of state crimes, negligence, and corruption, including federal agency involvement in the torture of detainees, fraud schemes, violence in the Nokistlan, massacre in the Tlatlaya grain warehouse, and killings in the Narvarte neighborhood of Mexico City. Carmen is the first recorded person to have been targeted in Mexico, our patient zero. Over the following 18 months, Carmen received 25 additional personalized messages with threatening and invasive contents.
Dear Carmen, my brother died in an accident. I'm devastated. I send you information about the funeral.
Starting on the 30th of August, 2015, the phone of her son, Emilio, a minor at the time, was targeted at least 21 times. Carmen suspects that the Mexican authorities are behind the digital attacks.
Sabiendo que un muchacho que lo único que hace es vivir su vida y ser estudiante, nos habla de los niveles de abuso que puede tener un Estado sin contrapeso.
Soon after, the digital targeting spread across her network. Carmen's colleagues, the investigative journalists Sebastián Barragán, Rafael Cabrera, Salvador Camarena, and Danielle Lizarraga were all targeted with similar messages.
I have key and trustworthy evidence against public servants. Help me, it has to do with this issue.
Bueno, fueron bastantes mensajes que contenían información de nuestra familia, de nuestros amigos, de nuestra dirección, de nuestra casa en la Ciudad de México, algún conocido o amigo que te notificaba de la muerte de alguien que no había ocurrido, pero que al poner el nombre de tu amigo y de la persona que habría muerto, pues no podías más que picar.
These hacks had happened a month after the team at Aristegui Noticias made a dramatic exposure. The then president of Mexico, Enrique Peña Nieto, had received a villa known as La Casa Blanca as a bribe for public contracts.
Había una vez una Casa Blanca de la Ciudad de México en posesión de un presidente de la República y unos periodistas que contaron su historia. La historia terminó en censura.
Pegasus enables a form of digital violence, but hacking is also entangled with consequences in the physical world. In the case of Aristegui Noticias, this included the media corporation firing Carmen and her team and suing them for damages. Threats against Rafael Cabrera, one of the journalists, as well as break-ins to the Aristegui Noticias offices, and fake news claiming that Carmen had died.
You know, in Mexico, when you study journalism, you take for granted that the government is going to be after you with espionage or in any other way. We are living in a hell.
Around the same time, 3 lawyers from the human rights group Central Prod were also targeted. They represent the families of 43 students of Ayotzinapa, one of the most traumatic events in Mexico's recent history. Forensic Architecture worked closely with Central Prod to expose the federal prosecutor's cover-up of the crime. We showed how the lead federal investigator on this case, Tomás Zerón de Lucio, relied on confessions extracted under torture to manipulate the accounts of the event. It was Zerón's office that had purchased a license of NSO's Pegasus, likely to surveil our partners at Central Prod, as well as others investigating other cases of Mexican state and corporate violence.
Hay un daño fenomenal a lo que es nuestra tarea periodística cuando el Estado o quien sea utiliza estos sistemas de violencia digital. Acaba siendo un elemento muy dañino para los periodistas que afecta el derecho de la sociedad a estar informada.
Zerón was subsequently charged by the incoming Mexican administration with torture and enforced disappearance. He was issued an Interpol arrest warrant and has fled Mexico. Incidentally, his last recorded movement is to have entered Israel in August of 2019, where he is believed to be currently hiding. Forensic Architecture is working with the parents of the disappeared students to call for Zerón's extradition back to Mexico.
Okay. This is the phones. All active. This is the SIM cards. Can you see it?
Yahya Assiri is head of ALQST, an organization promoting women's, workers, and human rights in Saudi Arabia. In February 2017, he received asylum in the United Kingdom after threats of imprisonment and torture from the Saudi government. A vocal critic of Saudi ruler Mohammed bin Salman, or MBS, Yahya and his colleagues have repeatedly condemned the violent crackdowns on dissenters and journalists in Saudi Arabia. At the end of May 2018, Yahya's devices were infected with Pegasus malware.
I received a message which is saying you have a court hearing in front of the court in Saudi Arabia, and if you want to know more, press this link. I opened the link in other device to make sure it's safe. When I opened it in the other device, it's opened a link for the Minister of Justice, so I felt it is safe.
8 months earlier, in July 2017, Saudi Arabia reportedly purchased NSO's Pegasus, despite lacking official diplomatic relations with Israel. 1 month afterward, Saudi Crown Prince MBS launched a crackdown against human rights dissenters.
Later on, they arrested all of the human rights defenders in Saudi Arabia, including the women we used to work together.
One of the main elements in their indictment was that they were in touch with Yahya. Yahya recounts the silencing effect that it has had on human rights work.
Myself, I was in more than 20, 30 groups in Telegram and WhatsApp, and each group including more than 30 to 50 persons. At this moment, most of these groups, it's empty. If you look to these groups, you will see deleted account, because all of them imprisoned.
There were also tragic consequences to this hacking. Yahya was in regular contact with Jamal Khashoggi, a Washington Post columnist and prominent critic of Saudi policies. On the 9th of December 2017, Yahya organized a human rights conference in London, inviting Jamal Khashoggi.
I invited him to the conference. He participated. Then they attacked him in the social media strongly, and he said in the statement, we stopped our relation with Jamal Khashoggi.
In June 2018, the phones of an Amnesty International researcher and an EU official were targeted by Saudi operators.
In the same day, I received a message from an official working with one of the European governments. The message was saying, I am a Saudi woman, my brother in prison, please support me. Maybe half an hour later, Amnesty researcher sent me exactly the same message from the same number.
On June 23rd, another vocal Saudi human rights activist, Omar Abdulaziz, who had attended Yahya's conference along with Khashoggi months earlier, was also hacked while in Montreal, where he resides, as was another Saudi dissident in London, Ghanem al-Masarir al-Dasari. And on the 22nd of August, 2 of Omar Abdulaziz's brothers were arrested in Saudi Arabia. Between May 2017 and October 2018, Omar engaged in almost daily personal contact with Khashoggi, exchanging over 400 WhatsApp messages. Among other things, they discussed ways to empower human rights in Saudi Arabia. One of Omar's legal counsels, Mazen Masri, recounts the context.
When Jamal Khashoggi moved to the US in, I think it was 2017, the two started talking together, discussing what could be possibly done from outside Saudi Arabia. They were not kind of plotting a coup or a revolution. It was mostly reforms that are not very ambitious, like more freedom of expression.
On the 2nd of October 2018, one day after the Citizen Lab reported that Omar was targeted with Pegasus, Jamal Khashoggi was murdered inside the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. Turkish authorities claim Jamal Khashoggi was injected with a sedative, suffocated using a plastic bag, and then his body dismembered.
But what's happened to Jamal Khashoggi is completely unexpected. it was really something completely unexpected. Unfortunately, I was optimistic in the first days, and I was in touch with his fiancée, and I was giving her hope at that time, unfortunately.
In the months leading up to his killing, Khashoggi was in regular touch with both Yahya and Omar. On the 2nd December 2018, Omar Abdulaziz filed a lawsuit against NSO Group in Israel, charging that Pegasus helped the Saudi government track Khashoggi. NSO Group denies that its software infected Khashoggi's devices, but does not comment on whether they targeted his associates. 6 months prior to Khashoggi's murder, the Saudi authorities had also urged Omar Abdulaziz to visit the Saudi embassy in Ottawa, purportedly to renew his passport.
And then they said, okay, if you don't want to come with us, then at least come with us to the embassy, and there you can renew your passport. And they insisted on him going to the embassy.
For Yahya, Saudi government targeting of human rights defenders with malware such as Pegasus makes the work of human rights activists all the more urgent.
It is very important to know what we are doing is completely dangerous. We must take the risk. Without taking the risk, we can do our work. So we must expect the challenge. Otherwise, we will leave them to not just hack us and target us, but violate the human rights without anyone challenge them or fight the violations.
They knew everything I said, everything I did. I knew that I was really in danger.
Mahdi Monjib, a Moroccan historian and human rights defender, is president of Freedom Now, an association that works to defend freedom of expression and journalism in Morocco. Since at least 2014, Mahdi and his colleagues have endured physical threats, intimidation, assaults, travel bans, and slander in the media by the Moroccan authorities. Mahdi believes that he has been under digital surveillance by the Moroccan authorities.
So I knew that I was under electronic surveillance, but I didn't know it was NSO group. And they analyzed it, and they found that Moroccan government was using NSO technology, and namely Pegasus spyware to spy me.
Mahdi's fears were proven true in 2017, when he began receiving dozens of suspicious messages.
It's a double surveillance. When you are surveyed by the political police, you survey yourself, and your family also survey you in order to help you, but it's harming you psychologically.
Cyber attacks against Mahdi did not stop even after they had been exposed internationally. 2 years later, between March and July of 2019, Mahdi's devices were repeatedly targeted with network injection attacks. Notoriously difficult to detect, these attacks redirect a user's web browser to a malicious website that then quietly installs a spyware on the device. For this to work, the attacker requires access to the national mobile network, which only a government could authorize. Amnesty International analyzed Mahdi's devices and discovered that, as well as network injection attacks, he had been repeatedly targeted with malicious messages carrying links to websites connected to NSO Group's Pegasus spyware. By the 13th of September 2019, similar attacks were also used against the device of another Moroccan journalist, Omar Radi, whose phone browser was directed to the same malicious websites exposed in the attack against Mahdi. This infection took place just 3 days after the NSO Group publicly committed to abide by UN human rights principles as part of a PR campaign to whitewash its image. NSO Group continues to market the same kinds of interception technology.
This is a criminal act, not because it's banned by the law, because it's very harming for the psychological balance of the victim.
Cyber attacks do not only extract information from a device, they also terrorize the person targeted.
My life really changed a lot. during the last 5 years. And also, I think my psychology, because of all these pressures, for example, I cry much more easily.
Digital violence enabled by NSO software has also taken an extreme toll on Mahdi's family life. Mahdi believes that information likely gained through the infection put his daughter at risk.
Sometimes I have the desire to leave Morocco. But even outside Morocco, they follow me. And they say that this is really very, very violent. And she gave the address of the place where my daughter lives. They said it publicly.
On the 29th of December, 2020, Mahdi was arrested by Moroccan authorities and held in arbitrary detention after a Rabat court convicted him of threatening the internal security of the state, sentencing Mahdi to 1 year's imprisonment. After 20 days of hunger strike, Mahdi has been provisionally released from prison, but has not ceased his fight for human rights in Morocco.
Freedom and justice are very essential to human beings. I continue to believe in what my father taught me. I will continue until maybe there will be democracy in Morocco.
It is like somebody sitting in your mind because of our relationship with our phones today. Imagine all of this is mediated through somebody who wants to harm you.
On the 8th of August, 2018, Palestinian lawyers Alaa Mahajna and Mazen Masri brought a lawsuit in Israel against the NSO group on behalf of 5 human rights defenders in Mexico whose devices were hacked using Pegasus. On August 30th, together with lawyer Cristiana Marcu, the legal team also filed a lawsuit in Cyprus against NSO's affiliate, Circles Solutions and Circles Technologies, on behalf of an additional targeted client in Qatar. Later, on the 2nd of December 2018, they filed a third lawsuit in Israel on behalf of Saudi dissident Omar Abdulaziz. Citing national security, the Israeli court decided to conduct the trial behind closed doors.
As an Arab, we have interest in what is going on in the Arab world. Legally speaking, we thought that to bring another case to the court would be helpful for us to show that there is a pattern in their behavior.
To demonstrate this pattern, Forensic Architecture has constructed this visual platform outlining the relationship in space and time of NSO's activities across different countries. These members of the legal team connect 3 of the fields where Pegasus reportedly operates: Mexico, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. On 26 November 2018, Alaa, the lead lawyer in Jerusalem, began to receive suspicious emails. 1 week later, the other lawyer, Mazen, received similar emails.
Around that time, I received an email from somebody who claimed to be a partner in a consultancy company based in Switzerland. This is a request that I've never had.
Promising lucrative contracts, these emails were later exposed as an attempt by Israeli private intelligence company Black Cube to intimidate these lawyers from pursuing the case.
It's not, the irregular, scams that you get over email. And then I read the article about Black Cube and Citizen Lab. And when I saw it, I was like, oh, that's exactly what they were planning to do with me. At that point, I realized it is Black Cube.
In the same period, 2 researchers at the Toronto-based Citizen Lab received similar emails, as did Christiana in Cyprus. What connects these targets is their work on NSO. The first contact to Citizen Lab by an agent was made to researcher Bahar Abdul Razak on 6 December 2018. Later, between the 9th and 15th of January 2019, senior researcher John Scott Railton received emails from someone identifying himself as Michel Lambert, claiming to be a wealthy investor from Paris.
You begin experiencing feelings that you don't have a roadmap for. It changes the weighting of speech and of action, and that lingers.
Lambert insisted on meeting John in person at New York's five-star Peninsula Hotel on the 24th of January. Doubting Lambert's claims, John orchestrated a sting operation and contacted the Associated Press.
The camera connects to here, and then the battery and recorder lives in a pocket that goes here. I haven't decided yet whether I feel comfortable wearing this tie or whether it's an issue.
At the dinner, Lambert praised John's work and pried him for personal details and information about the Citizen Lab's funding. But when confronted by the Associated Press journalist, Lambert got up and immediately left the table.
Can we please know who you're working for? May we know who you're working for, General?
The alleged investor was Aharon Almog Asalina, a retired Israeli security official. The Associated Press reported this to be the work of Black Cube, an Israeli private intelligence firm composed of former Mossad agents with links to the NSO group. Israeli investigative journalist Chaim Levinson told us of the close relationship between the heads of NSO and Black Cube.
They are not only customers, both of them, they are very good friends inside this, shady world.
In April 2019, NSO Group was purchased by Novalpina, a capital investment firm with majority stakes owned by Yana and Stephen Peel. At the time Novalpina made NSO its single biggest investment, the company's hacking of dozens of human rights figures had been widely reported. Within a month of the purchase, NSO used a new vulnerability to intercept the devices of over 1,400 WhatsApp users all over the world using Pegasus. But unlike previous infections, this exploit required no action on the part of the user in order to compromise a targeted device.
What's so troubling to me about Pegasus is that it collapses the protective value of that distance and just makes it possible for a government like the Saudis to basically reach out and touch you and get way into your business. And they don't have to do it with, sort of sketchy consular employees who lurk around and try to recruit informers in the diaspora. They don't have to do it by trying to build intelligence sharing relationships with your local security services or filing, spurious Interpol warrants. They can do it digitally.
We spoke to attorneys, clergymen, opposition figures, and rights activists whose WhatsApp accounts were hacked with Pegasus. WhatsApp also confirmed to us that members of the legal team challenging NSO in court were themselves infected by Pegasus, that they were targeted by the malware of the very company they were suing in court raises serious questions about the activities and ethics of the NSO group. Amnesty International's staff members documenting NSO-related hacks had also been targeted by Pegasus. Following that, in May of 2019, Amnesty filed a petition in an Israeli court to stop export licenses for Pegasus. In January 2020, a gag order was placed on these proceedings, claiming the technology's secrecy was of national interest. In July 2020, the Israeli court dismissed Amnesty's petition, citing, quote, insufficient evidence.
Even though we tend to think about violence against the body as something that is serious, probably more serious than violence on the cyber sphere. But I would, to some extent, disagree with this, because things like hacking have long-term consequences that we don't always see at the beginning.